Thanks for staying with us here on The Full View. So KwaZulu-Natal and the exponential effect of the floods have damaged more than infrastructure, many might say. It has also robbed people of lives and of livelihoods, but it has also robbed citizens of trust in their elected representatives. Visuals of eThekwini council staff members arriving at this venue where we are today on Monday, leaving with food and donated supplies, caused a stir. They were meant for the rescue teams arriving from around the country in search for the missing. Well, those items were later returned and a miscommunication was cited. The Premier, who is with me now, Premier Sihle Zikalala, caught heat when a water tanker that was delivering water meant for the public came to his home. He said he had intervened and called for a water tanker and wasn't home when it arrived there. Ultimately, the community of La Mercy got their water. But what these incidents show clearly is that public distrust in officials is high. Premier, good evening to you and thank you for your time. I know these are not comfortable discussions to have. And I understand that you have had a meeting with the La Mercy Ratepayers Association and you have apologized, saying that something like this would never happen again, and the community did ultimately get its water. But when you look at incidents like this and the public anger that is triggered by them, how do you interpret it?
Well, firstly, I think because you have started this issue, though you called me for other issues, let me deal with it. We met with La Mercy, a residential association. We all agree that I have been organizing water tankers for them for more than a year now. Whenever there's a problem, they will engage me. I will bring water tankers. I will speak to the mayor, Mayor Kawunda. People don't have water. He will direct his officials to bring water. So what happened differently this time is that water was brought to the hall, and after that they brought the water to my house, which then was a problem for them because they are saying there were people who were still expecting to get water. Yeah. So we cleared up that. We continue to service them. Even post that, we've been assisting them. You can get back to them. They will tell you that we've rendered number of things, support to them, even after that. Yeah. So for me, that miscommunication, as it is, whether it was exaggerated or not, it talks about the trust.
And that's the issue I wanted to go to.
We need to build the trust and a sustained organic relationship between the public servants and communities. But I must also indicate, I'm not a councillor, I'm the Premier. That area has a councillor, and the councillor is nowhere. He's nowhere to be found.
Which goes back, Premier, to the issue of accountability, which ultimately, as the leadership figure in this province, it's something you have to. It's within your purview and within your power to effect.
That's why I've been asking the leader of the DA, because that councillor belongs to the DA. I've been asking the leader of the DA why you don't deal with the councillor who have gone home. He's missing. He has been nowhere. Since the beginning of this flood, he has been nowhere. And I've asked Rogers, what are you doing with this councillor of Ward 58 who have gone, who have disappeared from people? There are crises. Yeah. Right now, we are talking about how do we accommodate people who are in the hall. There are people who are there who are homeless. We are working with the La Mercy Residential Association to get them accommodation, to get them food. The councillor is nowhere to be found.
And that's just emblematic, Premier, of a leadership a lot of residents in the province might say is AWOL. And when we're talking about AWOL, when we talk to climate change experts who tell us that the exponential damage of the floods could have been mitigated if infrastructure was just maintained, if it was just taken care of. That is a huge issue. In fact, just minutes ago we were speaking to a climatologist who said that's not happened, and when water has nowhere to go, it's going to flood. These are the deeper rooted issues, Premier. What can you tell us? What can you tell the citizens of this province, the citizens of this country, about accountability when it comes to those types of things not happening? I know you've talked about climate change, the president has talked about climate change, but there are issues on the ground, infrastructural issues that should have been taken care of and were not.
I think we should balance the two. The first is infrastructure, but the second is what caused climate change, what caused this environmental degradation, and we must address both.
Yeah, we've had a lot of discussion.
We must
on
address
the
issue of air pollution. We must address that. Secondly, infrastructure must be resilient enough to withstand any form of pressure, any form of disaster. And that's why you will see most of the areas that are heavily affected are those that are, one, do not have infrastructure, but two, they are exposed in a sense that they are around the riverbanks or they are in wetlands. So the second areas that were affected are those that are built along the sea, private properties that were along the sea. Then you will have the sand that came to close roads and all of those things, which we are now clearing up.
Right. But Premier, the whole point, and again this is an issue that climate change experts are raising, is that the city is responsible, the province is responsible for permissions for people to build in areas that are dangerous. You have an urban migration problem where people are coming from other provinces looking for opportunities, and they settle for long periods of time on risky areas, on areas where they are going to be at high risk of the kind of flooding that we've seen, and we've seen the exponential loss of life. Where is the accountability for urban planning and development?
Firstly, you seem to be not understanding the geographical nature of eThekwini. In eThekwini, you've got a metro which has both the urban areas and rural areas. The kids or the family of Mdlalose, where 10 members passed on, 4 have been found, 6 are missing. That is in Umzinyathi, and Umzinyathi it's a rural area. So in eThekwini, you must understand you've got urban areas, you've got townships, but you've got rural areas as well. And in rural areas, government, the municipality is not in charge of spatial planning. And people settle as they allocate land for each other.
Right, well,
secondly, you then have migration, people who move from rural areas in other districts to eThekwini, which then create a population that is high than the infrastructure that is in place. And therefore, the government is working hard to ensure that we get these people who are in eThekwini accommodated, but also in the safety areas.
But it doesn't seem to be.
Can I conclude? Sure. If you will see the last project that we have been building, because of shortage of land, we are no longer building standalone houses. We are building double stories like your Konopia and other areas, because we want to ensure that we accommodate more people in a less space. So there are programs, but the backlog is too huge, and that backlog is as a result of the apartheid system, which failed to prioritize African, Indian and colored areas.
No doubt that's a part of it. And, you know, we live in an area where we were allocated as well, which has been devastated by the current flood. So I take your point on that, but it still does not take away the responsibility from people. You have a plan, you have a Disaster Management Act, you have an integrated, disaster plan that exists, that needs to be enacted in ways that are up to the challenge of these adverse events. And some would say, you are not up to the challenge, or at least the province is not up to the challenge. I want to quickly go, if I may, to the rebuilding efforts now. The finance minister has announced a package.
But you are making a question, a statement, and you don't allow me to answer.
Please go ahead, sir.
With regard to the climate change, we have built all structures and systems. We've got the KwaZulu-Natal Climate Change Council, which include NGOs, academia, the business sector. We are part of COP20 and part of structures that deal with climate change. We have established in KwaZulu-Natal, there are disaster management centers in all 11 districts, and all of those disaster management centers were built by the provincial government.
Yeah, but you have, as climate change experts will tell us, a Disaster Management Act, for example, is now 20 years old. The expectation for this province, especially as we heard from the historians, which are at risk of really terrible weather, effects from bad weather, is that this province should have done more on risk reduction and planning hazards, and that it hasn't been done adequately. Would you say that it was done adequately, judging by the carnage and the destruction
No, I
we
wouldn't
see?
say so. I would agree that we have not maybe reached a level that is envisaged. But you must also be objective enough to understand the backlog we have inherited, to understand the work we are doing, but also to understand the fact that if you talk about climate change, you also need public education, so that the society will be with you, including in the budgetary processes, because you cannot prioritize things that people don't understand while they need roads, they need houses, they need water and others.
Let's talk very quickly, if we can, Premier, about the aid distribution and the package that's been allocated by the Finance Minister to the province. What is the first responsibility in your mind as it's operationally deployed?
We are working with, it's not yet deployed, it must be clear. There is no allocation that has been appropriated as yet. It is going to be appropriated, hence the sitting of the National Parliament on Tuesday. So the process is still on. We are now working on assessing the damage, starting from each sectors. You've got educational sector, where we must assess the damage in schools. We've got housing, we've got roads, we've got also hospitals. We've got infrastructure such as water and electricity and sanitation. So we are now completing the assessment. After that, we will have a clear figure or an appropriate figure which would estimate as a damage. Then we will start, as the National Parliament is meeting on Tuesday, the appropriation will be made as per also the grants that are there. Then we will start implementing.
If I may, just a final answer. Do you believe, and a brief answer if you don't mind, Premier, do you believe you have the right people in the city right now to handle the recovery and the rebuilding efforts of this problem?
We do have the right people.
Everybody.
We do have the right people. I wouldn't say all of them.
Who's not?
But the most of the people who are there are caring, are responsible, they respond quickly.
Who's not?
And therefore, there are those elements who are always dragging their feet, not listening to people, engage in corrupt practices, and undermine communities.
Well, what are you doing about this? What are you doing about those people?
With.
Shouldn't they name them and shame them, Premier?
We should name them.
Now's the time. Let's name them and shame them.
Yes, that's what we have been doing. And in each and every platform where we are meeting with a department that is not performing, we are able to say, but so and so, you are not performing as expected. And we have been doing so. We will continue to do so. In eThekwini or in any municipality where we find a culprit, we will name that culprit without any fear.
Well, they say that culprits have not culprits, or accused culprits still have careers in politics, like we saw with the re-election of Zandi Gumede.
Well, I wouldn't want to comment on one case of a person who is still charged. I believe the ANC have taken a view on that. She got elected because she is a member. Secondly, all members have a right to be elected. But while she has been elected, she has stood aside. And then that's a principle that if you are charged, you stand aside. All
right, we leave it there, Premier. Thank you very much for talking to us this evening. Appreciate your time. The Premier of KwaZulu-Natal, Mr. Sihle Zikalala.
All right, Iman, thank you so much for that. We'll